When you first think about learning to code, it can feel, well, kind of like you're staring at this massive, intimidating mountain with no clear path to the top. It seems so complex, right? But what if I told you there was a clear trail, a step-by-step guide to get you from the very bottom right to your first real creation? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today.
To really get a handle on the right way to start, let's first take a look at the wrong way. So meet Balu. He's got these huge dreams of becoming a star coder.
And, just like a lot of us, he saw these stories online and thought, hey, I can master Python in a weekend. And this is that classic trap, right? The myth of becoming an expert overnight. And it's a really dangerous one for beginners.
Now, his goal wasn't just about learning something new. Nope, he was aiming for a massive 90 lakh per annum job. That's a huge motivator for sure, but it also set him up with some seriously unrealistic expectations.
So what happened? You guessed it, complete and total frustration. When that high-paying job didn't just magically land in his lap after a weekend of cramming code, he was just left confused and defeated. And honestly, this is where so many coding journeys just stop before they even really begin.
Okay, so if Balu's way is the wrong way, what's the right way? The real promise of learning Python, you see, isn't about getting rich quick. It's about something way more achievable and frankly, way more rewarding. So let's find that better path.
See, the secret isn't about how fast you learn. It's about how you learn. The solution is all about structure. So we're going to ditch the get-rich-quick scheme and instead follow a project-based tutorial from Free Code Camp. We're going to build something real from scratch. So what does this structured approach actually look like? Well, instead of chasing a salary, we're going to build something fun, a simple, classic game of rock, paper, scissors. It might sound basic, but trust me, it uses all the core concepts you'll need to get started. And here's the best part. You don't have to install a single thing on your computer. We're going to use a tool called Replit. It's basically a code editor that lives right inside your web browser. This just completely removes one of the biggest hurdles for new coders, so you can literally start programming in seconds. Okay, to build our game, we need to understand a few fundamental ideas. Think of these like the Lego bricks of our program. Once you get a handle on these few pieces, you can start to build almost anything you can imagine. First up, we've got the variable. This is the most basic building block of all. All it is a container with a label. You use it to store a piece of information. For our game, we're going to need one to hold what the player chooses, rock, paper, or scissors. And this is exactly what it looks like in Python. Super simple. We're creating a variable, we're giving it the label player choice, and then we use a single equal sign to assign it the value rock. That's it. Next up, functions. Okay, so if variables are kind of like your ingredients, a function is the recipe. It's a named block of instructions that you can use over and over again to do one specific thing. This keeps your code incredibly neat and organized. To make a function in Python, you just start with the keyword def. That's short for define. Then you give your recipe a name, like get_choices, and finish it off with parentheses and a colon. Any code that's part of this function is just indented underneath. Easy, right? So what if you need to store a bunch of things together? Well, that's where a list comes in. It's basically like a shopping list for your program. It lets you hold a whole collection of items inside just one variable. For our game, it's perfect. We can make a list called options to hold all the possible moves. Then, the computer can use Python's built-in random library to just pluck one of these items from our list for its turn. Pretty cool. Okay, so we've got our pieces stored away in variables and lists. But how does the game actually work? How does the program figure out who won? This is where we add the logic, the brain of our entire game. Now listen up, because this next part trips up almost every single beginner. A single equals sign, equals, is for storing a value in a variable, but a double equals sign, equals, is for checking if two things are the same. Getting this right is absolutely key to writing logic that works. So we build our game's brain using a sequence of these checks. First, the program asks if the player's choice is the same as the computer's. Well, it's a tie. Then it asks if, which just means else if, the player chose rock and the computer chose scissors, the player wins. And else, if none of that is true, well, the player must have lost. And to show the results to the player, we can use this cool thing called an f-string. It is just a super clean and modern way to mix text and variables together without a bunch of messy plus signs. You just pop your variables right inside these curly braces. All right, we've learned about variables, functions, lists, and logic. We've got all our Lego bricks. Now it's time for the fun part, putting them all together and watching our creation come to life. The flow of the game is really simple. First, our program will call that getChoices function to get the moves from the player and the computer. Then it'll pass those choices into our check-win function to see who won. And finally, it'll just print that result right to the screen. And just like that, you've done it. You have just walked through every single logical step of building a working, playable game in Python. You started with absolutely nothing, and you ended with a real creation. And this brings us right back to Balu. Remember him? He was chasing an outcome, a salary. But the real immediate payoff of learning to code is the process. It's that feeling, that satisfaction of building something tangible with your own hands that actually works.
That feeling of accomplishment, that's what's going to carry you forward, not the promise of some distant reward. So forget the shortcuts, forget all the pressure. Balu was chasing a salary. The real question is, what will you build first?